He was a prince, a warrior, and a national hero, but he was also a monster. His enemies feared him, his people worshipped him, and the stories told about him are soaked in blood. History remembers him as Vlad Thirst of Wallachia, but the world knows him better by a darker name, Vlad the Impaler, a man so terrifying he inspired the legend of Dracula. But behind the vampire myth lies a far more disturbing truth of a ruler who impaled thousands, drank beside the dying, and turned his kingdom into a graveyard of horror. This is the true story of Vlad the Impaler, the real Dracula. Vlad was born in 1431 in Transylvania, a region now in modern-day Romania, during a time of endless war, shifting empires, and political betrayal. His father, Vlad II Dracula, was a member of the Order of the Dragon, a secret Christian knightly order sworn to protect Europe from the Ottoman Turks. The name Dracula meant the dragon, and young Vlad, as his son, would be known as Dracula, son of the dragon. But his early years were filled with trauma. At just 11 years old, Vlad and his younger brother Radu were taken as political hostages by the Ottoman Empire. They were held in captivity for years, exposed to brutal discipline, psychological torment, and the terrifying cruelty of sultans and soldiers. It was during this time that something inside Vlad began to twist. He witnessed impalements. He learned the tools of torture. He studied his enemies. And when he was finally released, he was no longer a boy. He was a prince, hungry for revenge. In 1456, Vlad returned to Wallachia and seized the throne through bloodshed. His enemies underestimated him. He was young, but merciless. Vlad believed that fear was more powerful than love, and he ruled his people and punished his enemies with horrifying violence. Justice was swift. Theft was punished by impalement. Treason, impalement. Disloyalty, you guessed it, impalement. To Vlad, there was no greater symbol of power than a sharpened wooden stake, and he would use this method to an extent that shocked even the most violent rulers of the time. Vlad didn't just kill his enemies, he made them suffer. He pioneered the cruel art of impalement, a form of execution where the victim was forced onto a sharpened pole, which was then driven through the body, slowly, often from the rectum or vagina, and emerged through the mouth, shoulders, or chest. The stakes were angled so the victim wouldn't die immediately. Many would writhe for hours, some for days, before death finally claimed them. And Vlad made sure people watched. Entire hillsides were covered in forests of bodies, twisted and skewered, swaying in the wind like grotesque scarecrows. He would dine among them, eating calmly as his enemies screamed in agony. One Ottoman envoy reported that the stench of death around Vlad's capital was unbearable because the roads were lined with rotting corpses on stakes for miles. To some, this was madness. To Vlad, this was order. One of Vlad's most infamous acts of cruelty came in 1457, during an Easter feast. He invited hundreds of noblemen, the Boyars, to a grand banquet at his palace. These men had conspired in the past against his father, and Vlad wanted revenge. As the wine flowed and the music played, Vlad suddenly turned on them. He accused them of treason, had them all arrested on the spot, and impaled the older ones immediately. The younger nobles were forced to march for miles to build a new fortress, Boyars Castle, perched high in the mountains. Many died of exhaustion and starvation. Those who survived were impaled later. That castle still stands today, known by some as the real Castle Dracula. Perhaps the most horrifying moment in Vlad's reign came in 1462, during a massive invasion by the Ottoman Empire. When Sultan Mehmed II, the same sultan who conquered Constantinople, approached Vlad's territory, he expected a fierce battle. But what he found was far worse. As the Ottomans crossed into Wallachia, they encountered a scene straight from hell. A field of 20,000 impaled corpses, men, women, children, even animals, all arranged in patterns stretching for miles. This horrifying spectacle broke the morale of even the most hardened soldiers. Mehmed himself was so disturbed, he turned his army around and fled. Vlad had stopped an empire with terror alone. Centuries later, in 1897, Bram Stoker published Dracula, a novel that introduced the world to the vampire count who fed on the blood of the living. Stoker's Dracula was charismatic, mysterious, and immortal, but he was heavily inspired by Vlad III. Though Stoker never visited Romania, he borrowed the name Dracula and gave the character a Transylvanian backstory. He even set scenes in a castle high in the mountains, just like Vlad's fortress. But while the fictional Dracula drank blood for power, the real Dracula bathed his kingdom in it. The myth may have changed. The cruelty? That part was all too real. Vlad died in battle in 1476, betrayed, beheaded, and reportedly buried at a monastery in Snagov. But even in death, the legends wouldn't stop. Some claimed his body disappeared. Others said he returned from the grave. His head was sent to the Ottomans, preserved in honey. Today, Romanians remain divided. To many, he's a hero, a defender of Christian Europe against the Muslim Ottoman Empire, a man who brought order to chaos. To others, he's a monster, a sadist who killed tens of thousands, many of them innocent. And to the world, he is Dracula. Vlad the Impaler ruled with fear, cruelty, and blood. He was no vampire. He didn't need fangs or immortality. His power came from pain. His legacy, carved into flesh. And while Dracula may be fiction, Vlad was terrifyingly real. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the darkness of history. If this story chilled your bones, subscribe to Historical Horrors. And remember, the most terrifying monsters are not always imaginary.